In this lesson, we're going to learn how to make adjustments to the color dynamics to make a brush do exactly what you want it to do and change colors while you use it. So with this brush, I have it set to go from dark to light as I press harder. You can get this exact brush that I did this whole illustration with over in my newsletter freebies. My links are down in the description so that you can go access that right now. I would recommend grabbing that right now, pausing this, and then coming back. So I'm just over here giving you some examples of how this brush looks. And the color dynamics is really key to this for this petal-y look and also this leaf look. So with the leaf look, you just have to play around with the pressure a little bit differently. You can make it much more pointy before you start adding pressure. And I just want to make sure that you understand how to tweak the brush settings and get the look that you want. Once you really understand the color dynamic brush settings, you'll be able to make changes to all sorts of brushes. So let's get started. So a few little bits of information about this brush. There's a couple looks you can get. I've chosen a dark color so you can see really well. I am going to just do a nice gradual and then smash. So this is a nice petal where you can kind of have a rough smashy edge to it like that. I also love doing it where you do a nice flick at the end. I think it looks like a cosmos flower. And of course you can try to drag it out a little bit more slowly at the end and get a nice rounded end. So we have smash over here, the little flick, and then a little bit more rounded. You can also try to practice some leaves. The little point at the end is where it's going to be a little bit more difficult. If you're in my membership, I do have a pointy brush. I always recommend practicing with brushes so you can really get to know them. Practice what it looks like on the biggest size and the smallest size and everything in between. Hard pressure, light pressure. I use this brush for light pressure when I want to do some sort of stem. And once you've practiced a lot with your brushes, you'll be able to think about which brush you need for various projects because you'll be familiar with them. So here I've just prepped a canvas with dark gray over here. I know it blends right into the background here. I just wanted to show you that with this brush, it's going to a lighter color. It's not just becoming more transparent. And you can see that if I go over here and do it on black. It does have some texture there at the end, but you can see that it's actually just a color. It's going from dark to light. And that's happening when I add pressure. So light pressure, light pressure, light pressure, light pressure, light pressure, and I stay with that darker color. And then as I start to press harder, my brush is set to go wider as I press harder, but it's also set to go lighter. And let me show you how to do that. So this is a full brush set that I have given my members for my art membership, but this is the brush that I gave you and it's called Experiment. So what I want you to do is duplicate your brush and experiment with one of them and keep one of them the way it is. So let's tap on the duplicate and go down here to Color Dynamics. So what I've done is I've come down here to Color Pressure. I brighten it with pressure, it gets brighter, but I also desaturate it. So if I don't desaturate it and I only brighten it, here's that same brush, I'm on the same color, and watch what happens. It lightens, but it's just going like up here on the color wheel as it lightens. It's really vibrant, and so if that's the look that you want, that's how you get that look. But if we go back into those settings, I also have some stroke jitter settings here, which just means that each time I pick up the pencil and put it back down again, they're all going to be a little bit different from each other. But we're going to talk about pressure only. So with the saturation, as it brightens, on this negative side, it means it's desaturating. So now I have this dark color to start with, and as I add pressure, it goes to a much more tolerable color than that one. And tap on it again. I can desaturate even more and brighten even more. Let's try that again. And now it's really faded, almost to white. So the more you go with the brightness, the more you desaturate. And at some point, that bright spot is going to look a little gray. If you have too much desaturation, not enough brightness, or vice versa, I can't remember. So you go through an experiment. So you can see with this one, I can barely see that petal on white, but over here I'll be able to see it just fine, right? All right, so that is because I've chosen a dark color. Because I've chosen that dark color to begin with, I've had to really set these pretty high. So even if I come back down a little bit, it's nice and colorful. But if I have chosen a lighter color to start with, then I need to change. Oh, I'm super bright white there. So here, because I've chosen a light color as my starting color, I need to come back down and not make it go as bright and not desaturate it as much. There we go. And that's not a very big change. So if that's a look that you want to go for, having your starting color to a lighter color that's not super duper duper light, or if you want it to be a little brighter, let's just brighten it without desaturating it some more and see what happens. I'm going to erase here. So that's a little brighter. That works too. Play around with those quite a lot, experiment, and remember that you'll need to change those depending on your starting color. So I've come back down to a good one for this lighter starting color. If you start with a color that's quite desaturated, so even if it's dark, but it's over here, this is all desaturated, it's going to have a totally different effect. So you'll definitely want to come back in and maybe not desaturate it as much, brighten it more. Woof! So that one kind of went from this color up to this color. That's a neat look. I like that. So as you can see, that's a lot of experimenting. If you don't want to experiment so much, you can go back in and play around with secondary color. So let's turn off the saturation and brightness completely and bump up secondary color. So we're still in this color pressure section, and I've bumped up secondary color all the way. Now secondary color is not like color wheel talk, primary, secondary, tertiary. It is this right here. So this is primary and this is secondary. It's whichever one is primary is the one that's showing up here. So if you tap on this one, it's still in this same spot right now, but it's showing up here, and that's the primary color right now. If I close that and go back into it, it is going to hop over to this spot right here. So it does kind of switch back and forth. But the primary color is the one that's showing up here, and the secondary color is the one that's showing in the other spot. So if you want control over what it starts at and what it ends at, you can go back. Here's the color I initially chose. That's going to be my primary color. And then for this one, my secondary color, I'm going to choose a really light, less saturated, so it's over that way, pink. So that's my secondary color, but look, it's highlighted up here, which means right now it's my primary color. I'm going to go back to this one to start with, and I've set my two colors, and I have full control over the two colors that it goes to, that starts at and goes to. Now that setting was all the way up, right? The secondary color was all the way up. If you have it lower, it will just almost like it mixes a little bit of that color in with that color. So it's a much more gradual change, but you can see if I change this secondary color to something nice and bright, you'll be able to see it better. So you can see it start to go yellow because yellow was my secondary color. If you think that works okay, but maybe you want it a little less yellow, turn that secondary color down even more. Now it's really just mixing yellow into that, and it's kind of this beautiful orange color now. If you want it to go really yellow like we had before, secondary color was all the way up, woof, goes to super bright yellow. So that's a great way to control the colors instead of just experimenting. I don't think I changed it. Yeah. So instead of just experimenting with lowering the saturation and bumping up the brightness, you can actually have full control by selecting your two colors here. So let's try a totally different color. Let's go back in. Hands-on experience is really what's going to help you remember this stuff. So hopefully you're following along. So I bumped up secondary color, and I'm going to go with a super dark blue. Let's go with a really navy blue for my primary color. And then I'm going to tap on, if I really want to know exactly what shade this blue is and it's not in my palette, what I can do, I've selected it, I can close my palette and go back in, and now it's in my history. Or you can just add it to a palette. So now I can tap on this, I can tap on this blue, and then I can find a lighter version of that blue. So now I have the same tone, the same hue I should say, and different tones. So I'm going to do a lighter version and for my secondary color, and I'm going to tap back on the primary color to start with the dark blue. So pretty. I think I want to go even lighter. Oops, now I've started, I didn't tap back on the dark. Very pretty. So how about switch? How about I start with light and let it go to dark? So that is having the primary color be the light one and the dark one be the secondary. All right, so quick recap. Down here in color pressure, you're going to either have this off, well, you can mix and match all of it, but I turn secondary off and I bump up brightness and I desaturate quite a lot when I'm starting with a dark color. It's very similar to what we have there. If I were starting with a lighter color, let's say this one right here, it's going to white really quickly. So I've bumped those up too high for a light version, for a light start color. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to lower the brightness and bring the saturation closer to 0. Now I have a pretty faded blue. Maybe I did it a little too much, so I'm going to brighten it and desaturate it just a little bit. Oh, that's super pretty. Can't quite see it on the white so much. Hopefully you can see it on video. One more time. Color pressure, color dynamics over here, color pressure, desaturate, bright, or bring those to 0, or experiment with leaving those right where they are and play with secondary and choose your primary and secondary colors right here. All right, if you liked that lesson, I have multiple brush making classes. I love teaching about brush making and pattern making and all sorts of other illustration techniques. And I have dozens of classes. You can find all the information linked below. I have a private community and we have a lot of fun. We have Zoom calls all the time and you get lots of help. I'm a retired teacher, so I know that I can help you with your Procreate journey, and I hope to see you soon.